Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Everything Aja. I am so excited to be with you guys on today. Today we are talking about a hot topic. I know many of you guys, we have been literally in the roller coaster wind of going from balanced literacy to science of reading. I get questions all the time, and I am so excited to talk about just the transition, right? Talk about going from traditional, I've been doing this for 20 years, or maybe you're new, into the actual science of reading. And I'm not doing this conversation by myself. In fact, I actually brought on a guru of the science of reading. She absolutely loves all things science of reading. Her name is Kionna, but she's also known as the literacy lady. She is so passionate about literacy. And just like me, she comes from an upper grade background teaching grades 3 through 5. And she was actually transitioned from upper grades into lower grades. Her last year of teaching was in kindergarten, and she took everything she knew about how to teach struggling readers how to read. And then she was able to adapt that into her primary children. Currently, she's actually got a promotion. Whoop, whoop. So she now actually is an instructional coach, and she literally teaches teachers how to teach reading. So let's go ahead and introduce Kionna up. Welcome. So glad to have you
Hi,
on
so
today.
glad to be here. I'm so excited. Hi, everybody.
Yes, hello. Man, I know just like me, you were upper grade lover, and then you had the transition to the lower grades. And now another transition into admin, just like me. So we have a very similar background.
Yeah, we do. I think that's why we connected with each other because I saw you posting all this stuff about reading and a book. I think at the time you were doing a boot camp,
Mhm.
like a phonics boot camp. I
Yep,
was like, oh,
syllable
who
book
is
camp.
this? I need to find out who she is. So yes, absolutely.
I love it. I love it. Well, if missed anything, do you have anything you want to add to what I said?
No, you introduced me very well. Like she said, I have been an upper grades teacher for over 10 years. And I transitioned into instructional coach actually because I felt like nobody was helping teachers, plan and teach
Mhm.
read effective reading lessons. So because I was seeing, success in my classroom, and because so many of my colleagues were coming to me and saying, well, how are you doing this? And can I sit in on your class? I was like, you know what? I need to take this knowledge up further, so
Mhm.
that way I can reach more teachers instead of just me saying, hey, come look at me. Now I can reach teachers on a larger scale. So right now I am working with all the third through fifth grade teachers in my building, which is amazing to me because I've
Right.
taught all three of those
Right.
grades. So I'm very familiar with the standards, the content, what's expected of the teachers. But then now, with this new information from the science of reading research,
Mhm.
in addition to me helping them with their grade level lessons, now I can help them plan and prepare for small group differentiated lessons. So this knowledge is it's the knowledge that keeps on knowledging.
I love it. I love it. Well, you mentioned science of reading. I know I mentioned science reading. So before we get too in depth, can you because I know you are the guru with this, can you just explain what the science of reading is? Because there's a lot of viewers who are completely new to this whole entire concept.
Definitely. So I want to say I'm not the guru yet. And really I don't even know if anybody can be a guru because
Mhm.
there's so much knowledge.
It is.
I just am sharing the knowledge that I'm learning with everybody else, and I'm still there's still things that I'm like, "Oh my
Mhm.
god, I didn't know anything about that." So but just so we everybody gets a standard definition of what science of reading is. Science of reading, and I do want to make a point to say people are calling science of reading SOR, and then we say science of reading, but the word that they're leaving off is research. So this is the science of reading research. And what that is just it's an effective evidence-based approach to teaching reading. That's the scientific version, right? And with that scientific version, it tells us that instruct people who are instructing children to read, or maybe you're instructing adults to read, we've got to make sure that we're emphasizing teaching the components of reading. I think, in the past, people weren't truly clear on what the components of reading were. So that caused people to make that graphic about the 5 pillars of reading. So the science of reading research tells us those 5 pillars are legit. We've got to make sure we're teaching phonemic awareness, which goes under the bigger umbrella of phonological awareness. We've got phonics. We have fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. Science of reading has told us those are the big buckets that we've got to hit. And if we don't hit those big buckets, then kids are not learning how to read. So that's the scientific version. The regular version that I want, parents and beginning teachers, I want you to tell people science of reading research, SOR is like a library, right? It's a library. And inside of that library, there are books, infinite amounts of books, all written by scientists. So not like your average, the person that's just writing a novel about what they want. The books inside of this library are lab tested, evidence tested, scientific base tested. And the scientists weren't just like one-off people doing just one research. We're talking about cognitive scientists who actually are taking brains and putting people under MRIs and scanning their brain to see what's happening while they're reading. You have linguistic scientists, so people who are studying the language, and you can't read if you don't know the language, right?
Right.
And you got cognitive science. So this, because a lot of people, I hear some of the back push to science of reading research is, well, we don't know who those people are. That could have been anybody doing research. And I get it, because we've had people like Lucy Calkins and others that they told us that their curriculum and their reading lessons were evidence-based, and they told us that they did research, but then when we really looked at it, their research was like at one school at one time in one demographics, versus the research that is with the scientists are like all situations, all socioeconomic backgrounds. It's vast. So that research is going to be the best thing that we can follow.
Absolutely, absolutely. I love how you gave the scientific term, and you're like, and let me just break it down. Let me just break it down. So, what motivated you to even become so passionate about the science of reading?
Ooh. Okay, so in order for me to tell you that, I gotta kind of go back, and I gotta take you. I gotta take you along the journey of me going from college student to teacher to upper grades teacher to kindergarten teacher to instructional coach. So I'm gonna take us through that journey. So came out of college, I was an elementary education major. When I got, of course, I was applying around, finally landed me a teaching position. And when I came in, they told me I was going to be teaching reading. They gave me a Reading Street textbook. I don't know how many of you guys are familiar or were teaching back then.
I haven't heard that one.
You had Reading Street or Houghton Mifflin, or like you had textbooks that you taught reading from. So they gave me the student textbook, and then they gave me the teacher's manual, and they were like, have at it. And, because that's all I knew, I was teaching what the teacher's manual told me to teach. I was going through the lessons that they told me to go through. But after about 4 years into teaching, I was like, something is not right. I'm teaching these lessons, and the kids are not, their data is not moving. They're not getting better with reading. But then not only that, I started to notice that students were starting my grade level off 3 and 4 grade levels behind. So it wasn't necessarily what I was doing that was causing the kids not to be reading, because they were coming in not reading. But
Right.
I also realized what I was doing wasn't making it better. Like, it wasn't fixing the situation. So I saw two issues: kids
Mhm.
coming into the grade level just not being able to read at all, and then me not having the resources and materials to be able to effectively teach them. So at that point, I started getting loud. I started raising my hand constantly at staff meetings, at district reading meetings, and saying, okay, I'm really glad that you gave me this textbook, but how do I teach these lessons to struggling readers? How
Right.
do I break down these standards so that it's digestible for our babies? And at that was, years ago. And at that time, people were telling me, number one, you need to be quiet. Stop being a troublemaker.
Don't make noise.
Yeah, don't make noise. But then number two, my administrators were using the F word with me, which is fidelity. Just keep teaching your lessons with fidelity. Just keep teaching them. They'll get it. They'll get it. They'll get it. And they weren't getting it.
Mhm.
And because I really care about students and children, and I could see on their faces that they were stressed because I'm teaching these very complex lessons, and they were just not able to access that information. So it kind of forced me into a journey of self-discovery. Like, how do we teach struggling readers how to read? So I was asking around, not getting any information. So finally, I had heard from somebody, well, you got to go back and teach the foundational skills. And I was like, what are you
What are
talking about?
those?
Wait a minute. My administrator told me to teach vocabulary and comprehension. What are you talking about foundational skills? So I ended up taking a Orton Gillingham class. And for those of you that don't know what Orton Gillingham is an evidence-based approach to teaching reading, but most people use this approach for dyslexic students. That this type of instruction is not in mainstream schools, or general education schools. So one of the takeaways that I got from taking those Orton Gillingham classes was, this type of instruction is not just for kids with dyslexia, it's for anybody that struggles to read.
Right.
So I was like, what? It blew my mind. So through bringing back my Orton Gillingham strategies, trainings, sharing it with the staff, it just kind of led me down to learning about the science of reading, because it came up in some of the classes. Oh, well, what's this research that supports the Orton Gillingham way? So I said,
Right.
okay, well, let me learn about the science of reading research. So then I started learning about all this stuff. I started reading all these books about how kids, learn to read from their easy skills to the complex skills. And again, it was just blowing my mind, like, all this stuff and research has been out here, but yet
Mhm.
none of the teachers know about it. So once I realized, oh my gosh, this is the missing piece. And then when I started to implement some of the strategies in my classroom, and I saw kids immediately grow instead of waiting until the end of the year, I knew I had to tell everybody that would listen about science of reading and aligning
Mhm.
our instruction to the science of reading.
Yes, yes, I love it. I was one of those fortunate people. When the whole world was doing Lucy, our principal actually had us get Orton Gillingham trained back in 2012.
That's
Like we were the unicorns.
that's
Like
and
our entire district, nobody else was doing it. And she had the whole our whole school and everybody did it.
wow.
And so I like when everybody like it seems like the whole world now is transitioning to it. And I was like, but we were already doing it.
But I already
'Cause
told y'all that.
we just started doing Lucy probably 5 years ago. But like the
Okay.
rest, it seems like the rest of the world has been doing Lucy for like 15,
Yeah,
20 years.
because it's fun. What
So what
Lucy
would you
teaches
tell
you is
that
fun.
person who has been doing, Lucy Calkins, or has been doing any kind of balanced literacy support, and their school is transitioning in the science of reading? Where should they start, and what key principles or foundational skills must they have?
So the first thing is knowing the actual definition of science of reading research, which we gave to you guys earlier. And the reason why you want to know that is because there are going to be some people, some curriculums, some books that are out here telling you, oh, you don't need to worry about the research. Just follow my lessons because my lessons are aligned to the science of reading research.
Right.
Well, when you know what the science of reading research actually is, what it entails, it gives you a different lens to be able to pick up materials and say, this doesn't have any of the strategies that I've learned that are evidence based. So, having that knowledge of the definition is going to help you become a more reflective instructor. But then, once you have that understanding, then you've got to learn about how the brain learns to read. So, and again, knowing that is going to help you be able to distinguish from people like Lucy and others who have their own opinion about how a child reads. And when you know how a brain actually processes and actually reads, then you can say to people, you know what you're telling me, it doesn't align, so I can't really listen to that. And the way that you can really learn more about how the brain is processing is learning about something called the reading brain. And with the reading brain tells you about the different processors in your brain that work together to help you read. So once you learn about that, then it's like, oh, okay, I truly understand why I have to slow down, why I have to teach the foundational skills because of the way that the brain works. So that's your second thing. So you got to know what the science of reading research is. Number two, you want to make sure that you're learning how children learn to read. So you can do that by looking up something called the reading brain.
Okay.
That'll help you. Or looking up something called the 4-part processor. So the 4-part processor is what I was telling you about, those different processes.
Mm-hmm.
So when a person is reading, the phonological processor in their brain lights up because that's where you hold all your sounds at. But then when a person sees written letters and text, that is where their orthographic processor is going to start going. So when a child is hearing the sounds, or they're like looking at a piece of paper and they're looking at the letters and then the sounds come up in their head, we want to know that and be able to explain that to people. But then the third processor that's happening while the phonological processor is going and the orthographic is the meaning processor. So let me break that up and kind of show you what that means in real time. So if a child saw the word bat, their orthographic processor is going to bring up those letters in their brain. B-A-T. Then the phonological processor is going to bring up the sounds in the brain. So the B is going to say B, A, T. Once your brain has those two things going, it's going to say the word silently in the brain. So bat. Then the meaning processor is then going to bring up all the meanings of bat that you know. Bat like an animal bat like a baseball bat like you're batting your eye. All those meanings are going to come into your head. And then that fourth processor, which we call the context processor, that's going to help someone determine, okay, does it have context clues about an animal? Okay, this must be the animal bat. Does it have context clues about baseball, sports? Oh, this must be the baseball. So your brain literally has to be doing all four of those things in order to read. So if we're going to teach how to read, we have to understand that process. So then when schools or administrators are telling us, you got to rush, you got to hurry up, skip this, go to this, you can then start to speak to, you know what? I can't do that because I have to physically rewatch. Because I also want to say your brain is not born to connect those processes like that.
Mm-hmm.
A teacher has to teach you how to do, or a parent has to teach you how to do that. Mm-hmm. But if you don't know about those processors, we can't teach people how to do that. So making sure you know what the science of reading research definition is and how brain actually processes reading. That's your beginning start right there.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I know that right there, that breakdown of it helps so many people. So thanks so much for breaking that down.
You're welcome.
I actually want to piggyback on that.
Okay.
Because earlier you were talking about what made you so passionate about teaching, with science of reading led strategies, was when you were trying to figure out how to teach your struggling readers. And so once you learned all of this information, and you began to apply it, you stated that your students started growing like immediately. So how can parents and teachers identify the learning gaps that they would even need right now? Because I mean, we're in the middle of the school year. So like how could they identify those gaps and then address them with their children's reading skills?
So in order for you to do that, you have to be knowledgeable about diagnostic assessments. Teachers are, I'm not going to say they really know about diagnostic assessments because we're not told about them. And then parents for sure, are not familiar with diagnostic assessments. So I'll back up a second. When kids start school or they're in school, there are assessments given by the county or the district that is supposed to assess the gaps in a student's reading. But the issue with that is those assessments are only about comprehension and vocabulary. So if you have students that are not at that point, those tests are not really going to give you the information that you need. So what you want to do is you want to find out the diagnostic assessment that goes with the reading skills that we were talking about that you got to teach. So if you want to see if they have a phonological awareness gap, you got to find a phonological awareness assessment and give it to your child to see if they have phonological awareness issues. Mm-hmm. If you're trying to figure out whether they have phonics issues, you want to give them something called a phonics survey that's going to survey, do they know their letters? Do they know their sounds? If they're struggling with fluency, so being able to easily and read those words clearly, there's a fluency assessment for that. We use, some schools use dibbles, but you can type in oral reading fluency assessments and you can look for that. If students have gotten past that point where you gave them an assessment about phonological awareness, you gave them an assessment about decoding, you gave them an assessment about fluency, then you can use those state tests to figure out what the gaps are, because most likely it's either going to be vocabulary or comprehension. Mm-hmm. But if those kids are failing those grade level assessments, then we've got to go down to more specific skill-based assessments. That's how we're going to identify the individual gaps that a student has.
All right. Well, thanks for that.
You're welcome. And let me just put a little plug in. So if you heard that and were like, okay, well, what assessments are those? What do I do?
Where do I start?
Book of discovery call with me, and I will definitely, I will let you know how I can support you in figuring those out, especially if you're a teacher that is trying to figure out how do I identify all of these upper grades older kids that have issues, how do I make an intervention plan. Definitely book a discovery call with me, or just follow me on my page. I'm always dropping gems and knowledge about those things. So definitely either reach out to me or start following me on my page, The Literacy Lady.
I love it. I was gonna say it at the end, but since we have her information is right down below in the description. So like she even has like her link to where you can book a discovery call. That is all right here in the description. Like,
Yes.
I love that. I love that. So as people are beginning to, grab their assessments, they start following a science of reading aligned, scope and sequence, understanding, what to teach. Are there any or I should say common misconceptions or misinterpretations about the science of reading that must be addressed, especially for a beginner?
Um, so the first thing is the science of reading is not like a textbook or a curriculum.
Mhm.
In order for you to the teach the strategies that the science of reading research has told us, we have to make sure that we are teaching what we call structured literacy, which structured literacy is just an instructional plan that tells us to start at the easiest skills in reading and move up to the more complex skills. So making sure that you know that part is, it starts at the easy skills and builds up. Sometimes I feel like that's, people think, oh, we can just start anywhere. No, the research says we gotta start with the foundational skills and build up. So that is I think a misconception, especially when we're talking about mastery. I have explicitly heard principals say we don't teach to mastery, we teach to expose.
Oh my goodness. I would cringe because
So that goes
I am
against the
so
research. But it's because they, that's a misconception. Oh, we can just quickly, teach these as long as we're teaching phonics. And no, it has to be a certain flow, and we've got to start the easiest to hardest. So that's like really important for us to know. But then another common misconception people have about phonics, and this is why I think a lot of people say no, I mean, not phonics, but science of reading research. People think that it's only phonics, like you're only teaching phonics. And I think that they think that because of what I just mentioned, they don't understand that it's a flow of easy skills to complex skills. And I think the reason why people think that it's just about phonics is because that's mainly where most kids' gaps are. And that's
Mhm.
mainly where we're teaching phonics skills, because that's where the gaps are.
Mhm.
Now, there are other skills that we have. So when you learn a little bit more, guys, about the different research that goes into how to teach reading, you're going to learn about something called Scarborough's rope. And then you're also going to learn about something called the simple view of reading. With the simple view of reading and the Scarborough's reading rope, it tells us exactly the skills that we need to make sure that we're teaching. But phonics is only one thing. It also teaches us effective strategies of how to teach vocabulary, how to teach fluency, how to teach comprehension. So know that structured literacy, science of reading research is not just about phonics, but that's just where most of the kids are. So that's what we end up teaching. But that's not the only thing that we're going to teach with structured literacy.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Look, and if you watched the video last week about the ABCs of science of reading, I actually went more in depth with the simple view of reading. So, I mean,
Yes.
hand in hand, same language right there. I love it. I love it. So, what are some practical strategies? When I say practical, I'm saying practical because a lot of people are new to this
Yeah.
concept. A lot of people have been just trying to do what works best. And girl, let me just say that if I ever heard somebody say mastery doesn't matter, I would cringe. I would cringe. I'm like, that has nothing to do with science of reading, balance, literature. What? Like, that's the only way you can close the learning gap, especially with like I'm like you. I've had upper grades, struggling readers, and I'm like, I don't care about we're gonna teach to mastery because like you have to go and address the gaps, and if they're not mastering the gaps, they're gonna continue to go from year to year to year as struggling readers. But anyway, so
And that's why I was the troublemaker, because a scope and sequence, what is that? I'm gonna teach what they need to teach until master. So I had at like my first school that I ever taught at, my colleagues used to laugh at me because like once I went through that journey and I realized, okay, well, I can't rush. They used to laugh at me because I was always in unit 1. And they would be like, girl, it's the end of the year. You still in unit 1? Yes. Yes, because my baby's still mastering. But at the end of the year, when they took the I first started teaching in Maryland, and what did the kids take, the praxis? No, I forgot what the name. There's so many names. It wasn't the Georgia milestone. It was like something else at the end of the year, and I had left, so I taught the kids, but then I left and moved to Georgia.
Okay.
My principal called me and was like, you know, you had a lot of kids make distinguish, right? I said, oh, did I? Did I now? I wonder why. So
in unit 1 all year long.
Unit 1, baby, because me personally, I believe there are certain standards, grade level standards, that if you teach them to mastery, it's going to help them be able to do all the other skills. So as I was teaching them the foundational skills in small group, in whole group, I was breaking down those standards, showing them how to effectively do it. We were practicing. I was showing them how to close read, annotate like we were doing deep literacy, which is why we stayed in unit 1 for a long time, because we weren't doing one story a day. And then we were taking our time. I was bringing in movies. One year with my 5th graders, we watched Roots. And when I tell you that thing opened their mind, it was just amazing. But they were making distinguish because I was going through it systematically. I was very explicit. It was cumulative, where I was building on what they already knew. So just making sure that you're doing that in your classroom is going to be a great strategy. So that also means that you have to develop what I call advocacy bone, which means when people walk into your classroom and ask you, well, why are you teaching this? Or you got to be able to advocate and explain why you're doing these strategies.
Because that's all I was about to say. See, most people don't have the luxury. Their administrator's like,
Yeah.
Like I have clients, they're like, yeah, my administrator was like, then I'm like, okay, well, you just plug it in here. Because I couldn't have did that. So the way I was able to go and advocate was maximizing instructional time. And that's right. So I was doing lunch and learns all day. Bathroom break. My kids loved going to the bathroom. You know why? Because we made it a game. We were like all of those basic recall facts kids can do in a line, quietly in a hallway. While I had the dojo points, they were getting points for answering simple recall questions. And so like it's crazy because our approach has the same motivating factor, but it's different.
Yeah. I'm gonna be honest. Me, I was like, by any means necessary, I'm doing what I do. But then too, up north, we got unions. It's different. Teachers have a little bit more autonomy. I'm gonna be honest. In the South, it's the same way they tell basketball
you can't
players
stay in
to
unit
shut up
1
and
all year in
dribble.
the South, baby. You will get fired.
Okay, I was about to say the same way they tell basketball players to shut up and dribble. I feel like down south they tell teachers to shut up and teach, and that it causes you to be like, ooh, no. And some people threaten you with, okay, you're gonna lose your job if you don't, teach the way that I tell you to teach. So that's why not only do I teach teachers how to plan and teach for reading lessons, I also teach you how to advocate and how to have what I call tough talks with your administrator. Because a lot of us are in places where, I'm going to be 100% honest, the barrier between you learning how to teach kids how to read is your administrator.
Mm-hmm.
And their opinion about how to teach reading. And my approach is, you can try to do it head on, where you bring this up to them, you give them the research, you show them through your data why this is the best way to instruct. Or you got to go find you a school that understands the importance of teaching through structured literacy, science. Because if you're in a place that really just does not value this research, even though it's clearly proven to be true, that may not be the place for you. You may have to dust off that resume.
Not telling people to go.
Oh, absolutely. Because at this point, I'm at the point where I'm like, if people don't want to help children learn how to read, ain't nobody about to keep waiting on y'all. Ain't nobody about to keep, just because I've also been under a lot of schools where they're saying, just give me a chance. We're gonna fix it. We're gonna fix it. We're gonna fix it. And the babies are just not getting what they need. And I'm not gonna be in a place where I'm watching 5, 6, 7 years go by, and I see they're not doing right by our babies, and I just state it. Like, that's just not my personality.
Yeah. I'm gonna say, look, a whole nother conversation, but I feel like
Yeah, it is.
we don't stick to something long enough to even see it work. I'm like, that's a whole
I
nother
agree.
lie. Because I mean, like with a lot of things, stuff goes away. And it's like, but wait, y'all haven't even had time to see it go from point A to point B. And you're like, oh, well, we're just gonna swap it. Like, a lot of these things take time. Even structured literacy, it takes time.
Yeah.
Like I said, I was kind of fortunate that my principal never understood why I used to do what I did. So I was last time, like, we're real similar as far as the approach, but close reading was how I got my babies to really skyrocket. But like, we stuck to the units. But like, I was able to teach them. It's the teaching of how to think, how to process,
Metacognition. Absolutely.
how to that's a process that you have to do every single day, and you have to stay committed. You have to stay committed to it, because if you miss a day, like, my classroom was so structured that I say this story all the time. Girl, one day I had a migraine. I had to go to sleep. I had to turn off the light. Do you know my kids taught themselves?
As they should.
And then after that, I told my principal, she goes, you could have just asked to leave. I said, but then you would have had to bring another person in. It was easier for my kids to go through a small group, go through a whole group. They knew everything, but that's because we did the same thing every single day with a different text. Like, they understood how to break everything down.
See, now you're getting into setting routines.
Mm-hmm.
So in addition to knowing about the science of reading research, in order for this to effectively work in your classroom, you have to have good management, which means you got to put routines in place, because that's the only way you're going to get all this stuff done.
Absolutely. In mastery. They're not going to master if you only do
They
one.
won't master it. They won't. They won't, because you'll be starting over new every day and having to explain, well, what is it we doing again, Miss Squires? How do I annotate? What is this? When you put that routine in place? And I'm also a big component of put it up on a big construction of paper. So after you verbally said that routine, now it needs to be up somewhere on that wall where the kids understand, this is how we transition a small group every time. This is how I pick my book. This is how, like, put those routines up so you're not repeating them every day.
Right. I love it. So you just gave us one practical strategy on the management of it all. Are there some other practical strategies or resources for teachers and parents that they can use as they begin to make this transition into the science of reading?
So for parents, I would definitely say learn the alphabet sound so you can teach them to your child. That is the biggest practical strategy.
I have that video
and I say for the parents to do it, because if you send your child to kindergarten already knowing their letters and their sounds and are close to reading, your kid's going to take off in kindergarten. And it's not, to me, you're going to see less behavior issues. You're going to see the kid getting really motivated and excited to be at school, meaning they're not going to want to stay at home because they're going to want to be at school all the time. So just doing that is the best practical strategy for learn those sounds and learn how to teach those sounds. There's a gentleman by the name of Spencer on Instagram that I follow. His page is called Toddlers Can Read.
I follow him.
He breaks it down so clearly for parents how they can teach their kids their sounds and their letters. So if that's, something that you want to get into, follow him and start implementing those strategies at home.
Absolutely.
And same thing for for teachers, especially upper grades teachers. You may know the 26 letters and sounds of the alphabet, but there are other sounds in the alphabet. There's actually 44 sounds in our language. And the reason why we have 44 sounds and not 26, because we got 26 letters, because some letters can be put together and make different sounds than they would if they were separate. So think about CH. When it's apart, it's k and h. But when it's together, it's that's quite. So not only do the kids have to know, k and you gotta know when you. So just learning about those advanced sounds are going to be helpful. It's going to be a practical strategy for teachers, especially when we know we got to teach those kids those other sounds that's beyond those 26 sounds. And the other practical strategy that I would share with teachers and parents, talk to the children.
Come on.
Because oral language translates into written language. So when you have students that can never really answer questions, they always stumbling through communication, when you're constantly talking with them, number one, they're constantly practicing sounds because speech is sounds. But then they're getting to see how people respond to questions, how people answer questions. That's going to translate into when they got to read a text, they got to ask questions, they got to answer questions. They're already going to be familiar with orally doing that. So when it's time to write, it will be much easier. So talk to the babies, build in talking time, discussion time in class. And when your kids are at home, don't just send them in a room when they get home. Talk to them, engage with them. Talk to them about what they see on the way home. What is that sign? What is this? What do you think about that? How was your day? How did you feel? Really engaging with oral conversation. That's going to help your children with language and eventually with reading.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. So can you piggyback? Because I think you were just hitting some gems. Can you piggyback on the bridge now because you gave us some strategies going into kindergarten. And then we have some upper grades because I know you were implementing upper grades. So can you just kind of you took us from before school, talking to kids, can you just kind of bridge that gap real quick?
So meaning what the teachers will need to do
No, I mean based on age group. So
okay, so
lower grade.
Okay, so I'm glad that you said that. This is what I want to kind of say to everybody. It doesn't matter the age group. Science of reading is going to follow the same strategy no matter if they're kindergarten or 12th grade. Now, what makes the difference in your instruction is the assessment. And the reason why it's the assessment is because you're going to know what skills a kid has and what they don't have. And then that's going to show you where you need to insert your instruction. So for the teacher, the assessment is the bridge. That's how you're going to figure out that gap. And that's how you're going to know where your entry point is when you start your instruction.
I love it. I love it. I love it. One crazy question now. You mentioned being an advocate for your children, right? I know we have, the research, the science of reading, and all of that good stuff. But there's a lot of people whose administrators are so new to it, don't want to like leave. And I say administrators because for most part it would be a teacher in a traditional classroom that would have this problem. But they're wanting to implement, science of reading practices into their classroom. You said you teach teachers how to advocate. What are some like advice that you can kind of just give that person? How could they advocate and be an advocate for their children when it comes to wanting to implement science of reading in their schools, or even a parent that wants to implement science of reading in their community?
So the first thing that I would suggest is get a group of like-minded people together. So don't let it just be you talking about science of reading or you wanting to bring in science of reading. Gather up people. And the way you do that is you got to start telling people about what you're seeing in your classroom as far as reading instruction, as far as test scores. I think sometimes teachers kind of shut down and don't want to talk about stuff like that, either because they think they're going to get judged on their test scores or somebody's going to say they're an incompetent teacher. So, like, we don't like to admit something is wrong. But if we were to all just say, hey, this ain't working, and then kind of gather up and say,
Mhm.
okay, why it's not working in your classroom? Why it's not working in your classroom? Why? And then you all have that together, then you can start moving as a unit as far as, okay, are we going to gather research and have a meeting with the admin so that we can present this information? Are we going to go to our board meeting and share this information? Like, you will be able to work as a unit, as a group, versus just you being by yourself. And I like that idea because a lot of people are getting targeted for just telling the truth. I'm gonna just be really honest. Like, they're being threatened with losing their jobs. They're being threatened with, well, we're gonna move you off this grade level. I've had that happen to me before, but that's a whole nother conversation. But like, people will start to try to take you down. So if you gather up a whole group, they can't take all of y'all down. They
Yeah.
can't. Just being honest. But then too, a part of this advocacy piece is understanding that if you're not in a place that's not, again, valuing the science of reading, valuing helping the children, another part of your advocacy is leaving. I know a lot of people don't look at that as advocacy, but it actually is, because you're putting your stake down to say, I can't be here anymore. This school is not doing what it needs to do for their children. I'm giving you the research. We've talked about it. I've showed you the data. If they're not listening, the best thing you can do to advocate for science of reading is leave. And I bet, watch, because when I left my previous school, now everybody's like, oh my God, we need to put this in place. We need to do this. And sometimes it has to be, that. So just think about joining a group, but then also understanding, if you've said it, you've done it, you showed them the data, you've done the research, then it may be time for you to advocate to be somewhere else.
Well, hey, advocacy looks a
That's
little
what
different.
because if we don't do it like that, our kids are gonna continue to keep getting passed on,
Yeah.
like somebody I had a principal that used to say, you got to be the squeaky wheel.
Mhm.
And I'm a person that believes when you're the squeaky wheel, stuff gets done. People might not like it because that noise is aggravating, but I'm not here for the no. I'm not here to worry about how you feel. I'm here to help the children learn how to read. So I gotta align myself with the things that's helping kids learn how to read. It's not impersonal. I don't want to lead, because I've talked to teachers who are like, I love my school. I love being here. I love the kids, but I don't love what we're doing with reading instruction. And some of them have just had to make that choice, and they're much happier where they are now. So, that's definitely so. I'm very real with teachers. I don't do it to yourself.
Like, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. Yes, well, any lasting tips, strategies that you want to just say to the parents and teachers out there that are transitioning, because it's really real out here. And I know a lot of schools, they're doing like everything. Like, and then like
Yes.
the testing, I mean, there's this one school, they're still doing diagnostic tests. I'm like, there's no reason y'all are still doing it. It's middle of November, but it's because they were literally doing all of
All of them
all the tests, like all of
instead
them.
of
You already tested that, but
see. But
I
that's why
think
I said you got to know how to read those big assessment scores to know what kind of diet. Can't give them all. That means you
mm,
didn't pinpoint what skill they were lacking in. You
mm,
just doing everything. But that's what I mean when I say some people think they doing science or reading, but really they not. So
mm.
that's that's for sure. So yeah, I would definitely my thing to strategy, best thing is knowledge. Build your knowledge. Learn as much as you can about what the research tells us, what the strategies are for each component. Because you can know a lot about phonics, but then not know anything about vocabulary. And because we're going to have kids that come in on all different, some kids are going to come in at the phonics level, but then you're going to have your gifted readers that they're ready to go into comprehend. So you want
Mhm.
to make sure that you have the knowledge to teach all those skills so that you can teach all of your learners.
I love that. And I just want to piggyback. For those of you guys who are like, well, wait, this is overwhelming. It's a process.
It is
It's a process.
it
There's no
is.
way y'all are going to learn all this knowledge this quick. I
Mm-mm.
mean, I'm still learning. And
Yep. Yep.
I feel like I was ahead of the game doing OG back in 2012, but a lot of the things that we learned have now, like back then, I've had to go back and even do the letters training, because that even breaks it down
Yes.
further. But like the letters training, I felt like I had never even done Orton Gillingham when I did letters. I was like,
Everybody's talking about the letters training. They say it's very
it's a college
intense.
course.
It's
It's a college
intense.
course.
But what I've heard. So I was at the reading league conference a couple weeks
Mhm.
ago, and I got a chance to meet Louisa Moats.
Oh.
And yeah, I know they were talking about letters, but one of the things that they were saying at the conference was letters is more about getting the content and knowledge, but then doing something like IMSE,
Mhm.
that's going to actually show you how to put the practice into the classroom. So there
Mhm.
is a difference between learning all of this knowledge and then actually putting it into practice. So I think
Mhm.
we got to do both, but don't try to do both at the same time, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, because letters takes about a whole year.
Yeah. Oh, I thought it was
It's
2 years.
about
Yeah.
two. Yeah, it is 2 years to do the whole thing. But I'm just saying, like, just to grasp a little bit, like one unit will take you about 3 months, especially if you're working full time. Like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
the it breaks it down probably further than teachers even really need to go. In my opinion,
Probably.
I'm like,
Yeah.
I am not trying to do brain surgery on this. Like, just give me the
But
basics.
that's what Louisa Moat says teaching reading is. She says it's teaching, rocket science.
It is,
So
yeah.
that's why and it's funny because her like keynote or her session, that's what everybody was saying was like, she's good, but oh my God, the information that she's telling us is so she really knows language. Like she must be
Mhm.
studying language at a very high level because she knows it to a T. But
Mhm.
it's definitely
It is. It
it's
is a
a
lot. It is
lot.
a lot.
But you can always start with her book, Speech to Print. That if you don't have access to the letters training, that's a good reference point to start with.
I love it. I love it. I love how you just brought that on back there. Brought that
Mm-hmm.
on back there. Well, I just want to say, man, you have dropped some gems today, especially just kind of just breaking it down because it is. When I say it, I mean this the term science of reading can be very intimidating, especially for those teachers and parents that are like, what in the world is
Yeah,
this?
yeah.
And I know a lot of people are in the process of transitioning into it, or are under administrators that are trying to understand it, and they don't understand it themselves, but yet their district is forcing them to include it, and they're
Yeah.
trying to do everything. And so, thank you so much for coming in. You have any last like this? I know you kind of did the plug at the beginning, but go ahead, do the plug again. Let them know your Instagram. Where
Okay.
can people follow
Okay.
you after this? Where can
So
they
I'm gonna
find
give
you?
you two. So I'm gonna give you two things. So the first thing that I wanted to say was, if you're trying to get just like some basic beginning knowledge about structured literacy, about the science of reading, I want you to go to a website called Cox Campus. Cox Campus is a website that there's a school here in Atlanta called the Atlanta Speech School. And they also want to teach people about structured literacy, about science of reading. So they created a department called the Rollins Center. The Rollins Center created Cox Campus. There is a wealth of videos about oral language, about early literacy, about structured literacy, about assessment. So if you were wondering about assessments, they've got videos about that. They have resources that you can download. So like for instance, when we were saying that phonics and reading skills have to be taught from easiest to more complex, on that website there is a guide for where you start at teaching those easier skills and where you're going to go. So I want you guys to sign up for Cox Campus. If you are looking for some more personable one-on-one planning assistance, I do work with reading teachers that you can book a discovery call with me, and we can kind of go over what it is what kind of support you're looking for when you're trying to teach either your grade level reading lessons or your differentiated small group reading lessons. So I work with teachers. I'm actually about to start working with a teacher now that wants to get help with looking at her data and creating her small groups. So if that's something that you're interested in, definitely let me know. Or even if you're just like a parent that is interested in learning about what kind of assessments and things like that, definitely book a discovery call with me, or just simply follow me on the literacy lady. You guys can follow me at either place.
Well, thank you. And the last tip I see in the comments, Cox Campus is the bomb. So thanks for that
Yes, it
last
is.
one. I do have her information for those of you guys that are like, wait, right down below in the description, you can see her Instagram. She's very active on Instagram, way more active than I
Yeah.
am currently. Like, I had to
Right.
take
I'm
some
about
time.
to go live at 8 o'clock. If
Oh,
you're a teacher and you're trying to figure out how to plan your grade level reading lessons, I'm gonna go live at 8 o'clock and I'm gonna teach you how to break down your standard.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Well, we can't wait to see you. Even more. Uh-oh. I think she's like, hey, I gotta go, how to go. For those of you guys that are in the Teaching by Design membership, I can't wait to see you. Don't forget, tonight is our call. So we're about to hop on here, hop on the Zoom. I can't wait to see you guys there. Everyone else, if you did not see the ABCs of Science of Reading last week, it's a 2-minute video that breaks down what science of reading is and even the simple view of reading that she was talking about. All right, she's back.
I don't know what happened.
I don't know either, but so glad to have you on today. Thank you so much for just tuning in, sharing your knowledge. We appreciate everything. And we hopefully will see you again on here, girl.
Absolutely. Can't wait.
Yes, bye.
Bye, everybody.